The problem with illicit sex or illegal sex, right? Illicit means illegal, meaning taken out of the confines in which it was originally meant to be in, right? We know that through this word, sex is meant to be enjoyed within the confines of marriage. Therefore, if you don't have the marriage vows, it's now illegal. Amen? Which is why in the Bible, if a female got married, right, or took the marriage vows and got married, because in the Bible, they really got married when they had sex, right? The vows were really just like almost an engagement, right? Or what we would call in the business world like a promissory note, not a promissory note, or a letter of intent. Like, this is what I intend to do. I intend to take this person on as my wife, and these are the terms of my marriage. Amen. But you didn't get married until you actually had sex. Amen. The problem with illicit sex is a blood covenant. Now, let me explain what a blood covenant is so you understand what I'm trying to say, right? In the Bible, when two people made a blood covenant with one another, what happens is that the people or the participants within that covenant now have access to whatever the other person has, right? Which is why God, with Abraham, when he made a covenant with Abraham, he slayed a lamb. He told Abraham to slay a lamb and laid the halves apart and told him to walk in between them. And then he came behind him and walked in between them too. He was establishing a blood covenant with Abraham. And now through that covenant, Abraham has access to whatever God has access to. Amen. Now, because of Jesus, because he shed his blood for the New Testament, right? Now we have access to whatever God has, which is why we shouldn't be living in poverty, because we have access to the God who owns the cattle on 1,000 hill. All right. Now, which is in the blood covenant, oftentimes the person who was wealthier or the person who had less wealth than the other would take on the name of the person who was wealthier, which is why in marriage, 9 times out of 10, because back in the Bible days, the women didn't have more money than men, right? So, which is why it's now tradition in marriage that the woman take on the man's name, because the man is meant to take on, or is meant to take care of the woman through the blood covenant. That's part of the terms of the blood covenant, right? Now, with that same principle in mind, when you have sex, what happens is it bursts or it manifests what is called a soul tie, right? Which is a manifestation of the blood covenant that you just made through your body. Amen? Because when you're supposed to have sex, which is why the woman has a hymen, and when the woman first has sex, the hymen bursts and the woman bleeds, right? So it establishes a blood covenant, right? So when you have sex, it establishes a soul tie. That soul tie now grants access to whatever demonic spirit that person has access into your life. So now you may have never touched a drink in your life, but all of a sudden now you want to smoke, drink, and snort everything out there. And the reason why is because the person you had sex with was dealing with addiction. Amen. That person was or you may have never had a homosexual thought in your life, but now all of a sudden you're a man and you think about having sex with other men. You're having dreams about having sex with other men. And the reason why is because the person you had sex with was dealing with a homosexual manifestation of the spirit of perversion. So now you're dealing with it. You see what I'm saying? You may have never, you may have never had a problem with rage, right? Before in your life, you may have been humble as a lamb, but now all of a sudden you're argumentative. You argue with everybody all the time. You're contentious and stuff like that. And the reason why is because the person you was with was dealing with that particular spirit. You ever notice how people, when they have sex with a particular person, their personality tends to change? You ever notice that? Their personality tends to change. They tend to mold and shift and to be like the person they're having sex with. And the reason why is because now they're dealing with the same influence, the same spiritual influence as the person they're having sex with. Amen? That's the reason why it becomes a problem when you have illicit sex or illegal sex. Right? It becomes a problem because now you have granted all these demonic spirits access into your life. Right? Now, if you have a legal soul tie, meaning you had sex within the confines of marriage, then the only spirit that has access to you is the Spirit of God, right? All it does is it causes you to be more in tune or more in sync with your partner, where you do it in the confines of marriage. Amen. Which is why it's important that when you're married, it's important that you don't withhold yourselves from one another. Because when you withhold yourselves from one another, what you're doing is you're actually straining your blood covenant with one another. Amen. For instance, one thing that this is something that everybody can attest to, because everybody's dealt with this. If you dealt with Facebook, you've dealt with this. If you dealt with an Android phone or an iPhone, you've dealt with this. If you dealt with a computer, you've dealt with this, right? You ever notice that with any software, every few months or every few weeks, there's an update available for that particular app or software or computer, right? Now, what happens when you don't update that particular software? It starts to malfunction. Stuff stop happening. Pretty soon the software is going to start working all together, right? Well, that's what happens when married couples don't come together. When there's no update in the software. Pretty soon what happens is the relationship begins to deteriorate because there's no spiritual uplink, there's no spiritual update. Amen. All right. Now, how do we do? Because I went into all that, but I had to let you guys know that so you can realize the dangers of when you have illicit sex, because soul ties can mess you up. Soul ties can really mess you up. And I've seen people who they deal with this one person and all of a sudden they flip. Oh, they was holier than thou, they was sanctified. They dealt with one person. All of a sudden they act like they don't know God no more. And the reason why is because they've connected themselves, they've tied themselves with the wrong person. Amen. They've gotten into a perverse relationship, and now they're connected to or have a covenant with someone who is not good for them.